Huge news coming in this early morning. It's been a diplomatic victory for India and too, of course, a pleasant surprise. 18 Indian Navy officers and Indian Navy men have been released from Qatar. That's the big news coming in. All 8 Indian Navy men have been released from Qatar. Qatar has decided to give a pardon to all of these 8 Indian Navy men. They were detained in Qatar earlier, remember. They were working for the Dara Global Company and had been, at that point in time, arrested on alleged charges of alleged espionage. But now the Ministry of External Affairs has released the statement on them, on their release, and the MEA has said, we thank the Amir of State of Qatar for this. These are the latest visuals. Remember, ensuring that the statement is put out only once the men are seen on home ground in Delhi. What a relief, incredible for their family members, because at one point, remember, they were sentenced to death. Then after a huge work that was being continued to be done by the government, it was commuted to jail term. Gorov Sawant joining me this morning on this big news coming in. Gaurav, it's interesting also that till the moment these men landed in Delhi, it was kept hush-hush. Only after that it was given out in official information. You tell us, Gaurav, how big should this news be considered?
This is huge. It's a huge sigh of relief,
yes,
not just for the family members, but for the country. For the past 18 months, these 8 Indian Navy personnel, 7 of them have reached home. The 8th hopefully should be back home very soon. So this required the personal intervention of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The Ministry of External Affairs worked round the clock in these past 18 months, and we here at India Today, we've tracked the story very closely. These 8 personnel of the Indian Navy, including 7 officers and 1 sailor, were working for a company in Qatar called the Dahra Company. They were very key in logistics at a port in Qatar. 18 months earlier, a false complaint was made against them,
yes,
allegedly at the behest of some Pakistani elements that they were involved in espionage for Israel. And that's when they'd been taken into custody, and it was a bolt out of the blue because India and Qatar have great relationship. These officers had been shot and posted, of course, after their retirement at a very crucial pace for logistics management at a port. Now, the moment this news broke out that the 7 had been not only arrested but sentenced to death, there was shock, there was dismay, and 18 months, in their families, the Ministry of External Affairs, they relentlessly worked. You'd recall when COP28 had taken place, the
yes,
Environment Summit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had personally reached out to Sheikh Tamim, the Emir of Qatar, and a lot of quiet diplomacy went in. So first, their death sentence was commuted to a life in prison, and after that, their release was secured. So 7 have come back home. Hopefully, the 8th will be back home very soon.
Also quickly, Gaurav, because Qatar has not really been the easiest to deal with also, even for India, and there have been scathing interactions earlier as well. How does one see this? Is this also a realization that when it comes to India and so much diplomatic push or the sort of campaigning that was done across India for them, that has also resulted in even Qatar taking the stand?
You're absolutely right. India, of course, you'd recall 2014, when Narendra Modi became Prime Minister of India, one of his biggest outreaches 2015 onwards were with the Middle East, because you have millions of Indians, more than 8 million Indians who live and work in the region. A lot of remittances coming from there, and Indians contribute very positively to the development all across the region. Prime Minister Narendra Modi would be traveling to Abu Dhabi in a day from now, and the first Hindu temple is
Gaurav, I request you to stay on because reactions of these Navy personnel is coming in on their arrival into the national capital. What a big relief, a big news. Let's dip into those reactions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Let's have 3 cheers for India. Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Bharat Mata ki Jai! Bharat Mata ki Jai! Bharat Mata ki Jai! Thank you.
बस ये कहना चाहेंगे कि ये वाले दिन का हम बहुत दिनों से वेट कर रहे थे और प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी और उनका पर्सनल इंटरवेंशन, उनका इंटरेक्शन, और एक और मौका लेना चाहता हूं कि थैंक करूंगा एमीर को कतर के, जिनके उनके इंटरेक्शन के कारण आज हम यहाँ खड़े हैं, जिस दिन का हमें बहुत बेसब्री से इंतजार था।
On the phone line is Captain DK Sharma, former Navy spokesperson who'd also been speaking consistently and campaigning for them. I like what you had said, Captain, just about a short while ago. Finally, our own are back home. Truth prevails, victory for the innocent colleagues and also, who are detained illegally. What should this moment mean? Because for the longest time, it felt like there was no coming back for them.
No, Pooja, we were always very, very sure. I know all of them personally, and I have been, interacting with the media and other agencies. One thing was very clear. They were standing on all frivolous charges. They were kept there on, some pretext or the other. I don't know what was the actual truth behind it, but now once the things started unfolding in the courts, the charges didn't stand any ground. And that is why the first, capital punishment, it had to be revoked. Then again, coming back to turning that into imprisonment. And the third thing is they are back home. So it was destined like that. But here we must not discount the efforts put in by the MEA, the government of India, and the head of the government of India. There is no doubt about it. Without Prime Minister Modi, this would not have been possible.
You've been interacting with the family members as well, and I understand there would be a lot of secrecy around it, not much details could have been put out, and then you see their faces here in Delhi. How are families reacting all through these months of the roller coaster that this was?
It was a torture for them, Pooja, it was a torture for them. They knew it all throughout. Let me tell you one thing. These guys, the charges which were put on them were totally unbelievable. And, we know the families, we have grown up together. So all these things are not possible. But then when you get a shock like this, they just went into the cocoons. What do you do? How do you face the people? How do you face yourself? So all that vindicated today, and they are back
Incredible.
home.
And Captain DK Sharma, to you as well, constantly campaigning and acting in support for these men and their families, specifically keeping them in loop. Appreciate you joining us. Gaurav Sawant continues to be with us. Some reactions also coming in. The first reaction of the 8 Indian Navy personnel, and some of them, I remember, are senior veterans, had served in the force for so long, and then to face what they did in Qatar, now arriving back home. What a reunion it's going to be with the family. Let's listen into their reactions.
Without the intervention of Prime Minister Modi, it wouldn't have been. आज हम आपके सामने खड़े नहीं हो रहे होते अगर intervention नहीं होता at that level, highest level. And especially Government of India, उनके अथक प्रयास से कि वो consistently लगे रहे, and we are there in front of you.
As Gorov Savant continues to be with us, Gaurav, let's accept it, because what this senior officer also said is correct. Had this not happened at the highest level, and I'm sure that we don't know behind what sort of an arrangement or quid pro quo has been decided, but the discussions would have to be at the highest level for a place like Qatar to be able to free these 8 men.
Well, Qatar respects India, India respects Qatar, and from day one, from the moment that the 8 Indian Navy personnel were taken into custody and sentenced to death. Remember, this wasn't an easy task. Initially, when they were sentenced to death, not even the court papers were made available either to the families or to the to India when India sought consular access. The 8 Indian Navy personnel were in solitary confinement in prison there. One wasn't allowed to interact with the others. The families who had rushed to Qatar were initially not in a position to interact with them. So this was an absolute torture, emotional torture. We know some of those personnel personally. Right honorable men where, they'd served the Indian Navy with honor, and then they'd gone out to work to earn an honest living. They were frivolous charges, trumped up charges, because an Indian group had managed to get a contract which initially was with Pakistani elements. So all of that, those were dirty games that were being played. Yet
Correct.
India was steadfast. India reached out to the government of Qatar. Consular access was sought. They were given consular access. The families were then permitted to meet these individuals. They were then no longer in solitary confinement. So step by step, and then Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the sidelines of COP28 spoke to the Amir personally. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar spoke to his counterpart repeatedly through interlocutors, through neighboring countries. A lot of effort was made, and finally, that golden moment. You know, it was expected that they would return by Diwali. That was when their death sentence was commuted to a life in prison, and now the release has happened. And this really shows the close bond between India and Qatar, India and West Asia, that played a very critical role in securing the release.
Absolutely. What an incredible moment, but also a diplomatic victory. Let's not forget, for India to be able to get those men. Thank you so much, Gaurav Sawant, for getting us this big and a good news this morning. Remember, these men you're looking at were so close to the gallows. They were given death sentence. And now they're back home, waving, cheering and shouting Bharat Mata Ki Jai, and saying that it has happened at the highest level. But what a moment to be reuniting with their family. We wish them best of luck. We'll of course be getting you more updates and visuals. You're looking at the MEA statement on your screens there.